Hey, this is Max from Made in Less. Yesterday I made my Steam page public and I released the first trailer for my game, Corporate Hell. And today I'm going to be releasing my first devlog. Today we're going to be talking about something that I've been working on for a while now, the tutorial for my game. And tutorials in general, some of the things that I've learned through research and experience of watching people play several versions of my tutorial. So if you've seen my Steam page or if you saw the trailer, you can probably tell that I've got several complicated instruments going on. Each one of them has their own specific mechanics. They alter ingredients in different ways than everything else. And that makes gameplay a lot more fun. It opens up a lot of doors for me, but it also makes teaching somebody how to play the game a little bit more complicated. My original idea was that I would put every single detail that you could possibly need about how to play the game in a readily available source of information, that being your employee manual. As you can see here with the cauldron, I have detailed steps on how exactly to use the instrument and how it affects ingredients specifically. With this tool, the tutorial would actually be very hands-off. It would gently guide them towards an objective, but it wouldn't really force them to do anything outside of the normal parameters of the game. My original thought process was that if somebody that liked to go into something blind and figure it out on their own, at their own pace, they would be able to do so. If there were people that felt like they understood very quickly how everything operated, it also wouldn't hinder them. If you were replaying the game for a second time and you already knew how everything worked, it would have minimal impact on you starting a new game. But if you felt like you needed explanation or you needed an in-depth tutorial, all of the information was there and available to you. On paper, I thought this sounded great, and then I saw some people playtest it with a very rudimentary version of that kind of tutorial, and then the in-game version of that tutorial that I built. The outcome was variable and middling at best. Some people really thrived. They made their own mistakes, went back and consulted the manual and learned from them, and by the end of their playtest, I felt like they had a really great understanding of how everything operated. But other people really struggled. Some people made some assumptions about how the instruments operated that were incorrect, and it made the game much harder than it was intended. And some people straight up didn't get it. By the end of the playtest, they still had no idea how to play the game. They hadn't even met the quota of the playtest once. And here's what I'll say I learned about tutorials through all my research. There's a solid consensus that everybody that has ever played a game and has a comment about a tutorial, their thoughts are they want it to both effectively teach them how to play the game, of course, but they don't want it to impede them at all if they already understand how to play the game. So there are two ways to achieve this objective that I was able to find in my research. The first route is to incorporate the tutorial into the actual gameplay itself, so that if you're playing it and you already understand how it works, you just continue playing the game as if the tutorial wasn't even there. And if you don't know how the game works, it's there to guide you. There's a couple of keys to achieve a tutorial like this. One is repetition. If you want somebody to understand a facet of your game, you have to make them do it repeatedly. Another really important one is a non-intrusive UI. If you have something that's constantly stopping the player from playing the game and they have to continue through it to continue playing the game, it's just going to irritate the people that feel like they already understand how to play. It also breaks people out of the experience of playing your game. Of course, you can have buttons to click to make them continue to a next part. You can give them objectives that they must complete before they can continue, but actually pausing the game to make them stop. And then what I hate even more is when people have a timer on the button before you can actually click it. Oh, I can't stand it. Don't do that. One of the best examples of this kind of tutorial, it is an absolute masterclass, and I just recently played it. It's actually a great game. Split Fiction. The way they teach you to play their game is absolutely phenomenal. There's not a single quote tutorial in the entire game, but they are constantly adding new mechanics and new behaviors that any other game would probably require a hefty amount of tutorial. One of those, as a bad example, in my opinion, was Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy was a great game. I thought I had a great time playing it, but throughout the entire game, they would have random points where you break in gameplay to read some kind of user interface explanation of a new mechanic. Now, I do think that that was on purpose and because of the audience they were targeting, but that's a whole other conversation that I won't get into. The one downside to a tutorial like Split Fiction, where you aren't really forcing the player to do a very simple task, where you're kind of hiding the tutorial in the gameplay almost, it makes it very hard for people that have never played games before to progress through your game. My wife is brand new to video games, and she's a great candidate for testing my tutorial for that reason. If she were to play a game like Split Fiction, she would really struggle because there are certain nuances that seasoned gamers understand instinctually that are required for you to understand to progress through a tutorial like Split Fiction's tutorials. The other route you could take is the route that I ended up taking, which is a much more, let's call it hand-holding tutorial, where you guide the player through some of your mechanics, but you make it skippable for any seasoned players that you might have. The benefit of this kind of tutorial is, in my opinion, it's the best way to make everybody happy. If you don't know how to play the game, it will teach you how to play the game in a guided manner. And if you already know how to play the game, you can skip it and it's not getting in your way whatsoever. However, there are two main cons to this type of tutorial. One being that you have to be very careful not to over-explain things. If you're forcing a new player to go through a tutorial, you can't spend forever teaching them the same mechanic over and over again because they'll get bored. The other con is because of people like Markiplier. If you've ever watched any of Markiplier's videos, you'll know that he refuses to take any tutorial that he can skip, and oftentimes it leads to him having little to no understanding of how the game actually works. This is absolutely brilliant for content on YouTube, but for people that actually play your game, it might give them the opportunity to self-inflict distaste upon your game. So how do you decide which one to go with? Which kind of tutorial should you use in your game? And my suggestion is to ask yourself two questions. How conventional is your game? And what is your audience? So when we're talking about how conventional your game is, we're thinking about how familiar would your controls be to someone that's played games before. For example, if you're making a first-person shooter, odds are people playing that game have played first-person shooters before. So building your tutorial in a way that will let them play the game and learn how to play at the same time without an intrusive menu or something preventing them from progressing the story or really getting into the meat of your game might be the best way to go. Now for the discussion on audience, let's go back to Hogwarts Legacy for a second. Hogwarts Legacy was a video game and a franchise that is worldwide and very, very popular amongst all crowds. And it's the first massive Harry Potter game in quite a long time. Because of how popular that franchise is amongst many different crowds of people, I think it's safe to assume that the developers of that game were targeting an audience that might not have been too familiar with gaming in general. But if you're making a game like mine, for example, where at its heart it's a point-and-click simulation game, but each instrument's mechanics might not be immediately recognizable or familiar to everyone. So it'd be really hard for me to ingratiate a tutorial with gameplay that a gamer is already familiar with. And of course, for anything that you're building at any point in time, the best way to figure out if it works is by letting somebody play it. Whether that's a stranger that you got to play test your game through some kind of Discord, or it's your friend or your sibling or your parent or whatever. My only advice there is to just be careful with who you have playtesting your game. I generally prefer to have my friends test it because I trust them enough to be honest with me, and I know that if they enjoy something or if they think something is working, the odds are there's a large audience in the world that would agree with them. What you want to avoid is getting people that are purposely, for lack of a better term, shitting on your game for every detail they possibly can. Because if there's one thing I've learned from watching people play my game, it's that if somebody's playing your game, they want it to work too. Most likely, they want to know how to play it too. It's a team effort. Having somebody play your game with a more quality assurance mindset or somebody very nitpicky can be extremely valuable, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying specifically for a tutorial, I don't think you're going to get the best advice from that kind of person. If you're still here, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please, please, please go check out my Steam page. It just went up. Add it to your wish list. My game is called Corporate Hell. If you found any of my advice helpful, let me know. If you disagree with one of my takes, I'd love to know that too. Once again, my name is Max from Made in Less. Go check out Corporate Hell on Steam, and I'll see you later.